Welcome back to Cisco Knowledge Base. This is Zach from Content Security Team. Today we'll cover a quick topic, how to deploy and configure Cisco Cloud Web Security Appliance in a connector mode. So with the release starting 7.5.7.0.4.8 build, there was a service offering for Cisco Cloud Web Security Appliance, which allows and provides industry-leading security and control in the enterprise. What I have done is divided into two parts. We'll go over part one, which is the deployment of Cloud Web Security Appliance in a connector mode. We'll run through these steps. And then in part two, we'll discuss how to configure and test CWS policy step by step. And we'll look at some of the access log, we'll look at some of the captures taken and pointed out some of the connection sockets between the client and web security appliance in a connector mode, and then how it connects to the tower as well. So with that, we'll start with the top of the page. In part one, where steps are included how to deploy a web security appliance in a connector mode, we'll start with the reset configuration from system administration, and it requires a serial or console connection to it. And as I mentioned before, this is the first release when we started at 7.5.7.0.4.8. Now it's also available with the 8.0 or 8.x releases as well. We'll run through the setup wizard. We'll select the deployment mode. We'll install the configuration. We'll log back in, and we start and compare to look at the differences when we deploy in a connector mode. What are the services that we have available? So here is the user guide that is posted on cisco.com, and as well as under Web Security Appliance Cisco portal, that it talks about how to deploy a web security appliance in a connector mode in details. We'll take a look at it. This is a user guide pulled off of cisco.com. In Chapter 7, it's a step-by-step detail provided in order to deploy web security appliance in a cloud web security mode. We'll just walk through fairly quick. It touches some bases in terms of when you deploy in a connector mode, what do we use to connect to the towers, and how the policies are enforced on the tower itself. So there's the standard mode of the web security appliance, includes on-site web security services such as layer 4 traffic monitor, and these are not available. So we'll take a quick look what's available and what's not. So in the menu option, when we deploy in a cloud connector mode under system status, we'll see this as an option. But in a standard mode, these are all the options available. In a cloud connector mode, we'll just see system status and information. Similar to it with the web security manager, we have these four options available, so we can do identities, cloud routing policies, and custom URL and external data loss prevention. And if you deploy it in the standard mode, we have these options. And I believe security services as well. There are several options in the standard mode. Then we'll go down to the network and system administration. So different. So these are just a quick look. As far as to run through the setup wizard, steps are pretty straightforward. With any other web security appliance deployment, we log into via the GUI using the serial connection this time, either HTTPS or HTTP. Once we log in, We're going to go to System Administration Setup Wizard, accept the EULA license agreement, and then begin setup. And these are some of the settings that is available in the deployment mode, and we'll go through it. So here's the option that we will see to select on the mode Cloud Web Security Connector, and then rest of the configuration. So with that, let's start with, I have one of the machine here that I would like to set up as Cloud Connector. So as the instructions are, when we first log in, we run through System Administration, Setup Wizard, Begin Setup. System Administration, Setup Wizard. Reset configuration is for if you're deploying the machine for the first time, or if this machine was deployed as a standard mode that can be changed. Starting with the 8.x release, we have included this option, which extremely valuable. This will allow us to either reset the network setting as well. That would be IP addresses such as local machine IP, default gateway, some of the DNS, and as listed here. But if you want to retain it, just make sure this box is unchecked. We'll do a reset config. Okay. And then we'll go to Setup Wizard. So since we chose to keep the standard network configuration, we kept most of the options available here in DNS, the host name, time servers. Here's the first thing that the user guide is mentioned. When we go down here, as in a step 1, Cloud Web Security Connector, as versus the standard. And there is a fair note here. This appliance will be used for on-premise, and this one appliance is for primarily direct traffic to Cisco Cloud Web Security to enforce all the defense. So if you check that, then we click Next. Okay, make sure we have done it. So this part where it talks about the Cloud Web Security proxy server, this is the one requires for the tower. At least one address is required at this time. I believe I have one. We'll grab it from here. We use copy it. It allows you up to 3 addresses, but it will not allow you to move on without at least entering one of them. The rest of the options are failure handling. You can take the default or how you want to handle it. If this fails, you want to drop the traffic. And there are some, these are for authorization or authentication. There are keys as well. So we'll keep things simple. Do next. So these are my setting as for the local IP addresses and for IPv4, and we have IPv6 if you have it configured, but in my case I have not. I have only M1 configured with the 172.18.254.123. Go next. My default gateway, again, as I chose to keep my setting, network setting, as it is, so I have my default gateway as well saved. So we go next. Here you can configure if you have a WCCP router that's syncing with the transparent redirection or layer 4 switch by default for transparent mode. Password. An email address for system alerts that needed. Once you do this, it will give you a standard template just to make sure what we are about to install. And if you look at it, it's a host name, IP DNS, time server, your time zone, and these can be changed later on as well. Cloud Web Security Proxy Server, as we manually configured it. The appliance mode, this is the most important one, Cloud Web Security Connector mode. And we got IPv4 default gateway and whatnot. Once we hit install this configuration, it goes out and installs it, and this page will need to be refreshed. Give it a moment. Okay. Now we are up and loading the report page first. Let's look at our notes to make sure we are following. So the part 1 is pretty straightforward. We ran through setup wizard, select the deployment mode, install configuration and log back in. We're about to do that. And review the service tab and available options. So what we'll do is we'll look at the service tabs as the user guide showed us what are available and what are not. So basically, let's go down. Actually, it was on the top of the page over here. So these are the tabs that we're going to go through with what are the functions are available within the sub-tab in the menu. So reporting, we got system status, web security managers, we have these options, security services, network and system administration. Just to give you a contrast, if you look at the web security appliance that is deployed in a standard mode, what are the options? So here we're looking at some of these options in pretty condensed form. If we come down here, this is the standard deployment. Under reporting, we see a lot more options available. Same thing with the web security manager, security services, network, and system administration. Just to give you an idea the difference between when we do change a connector mode. Under reporting system status, it will show you our web proxy status as a cloud web security connector mode. So that covers the part 1. Now let's look at the part 2. So part 2 essentially all it means that we need to configure a cloud identity to when we're looking at the access log or other information we can verify it. Cloud routing policy and web security proxy server, which we have done during the deployment on the step 1. We'll test some access to a website and look at the socket stream and connectivity, review the log and the packet capture. Then we'll review in the end. So with that, let's jump back. So first thing is cloud identity. Under Web Security Manager, identity. So we'll go ahead and create an identity. We'll call it CWS identity 1. Submit. Okay. Edit. go ahead and commit that. Then it talks about the create cloud routing policy. So this will be under Tour. By default, it picks up Cloud Web Security Proxy, which is the one that we have configured. We can always add one if need be, and call it more logical name CWS Policy 1. We can tie that policy with our identity, just like we do with the standard mode. So we create a CWS Policy 1, and we tied it with the CWS Identity 1. Submit. Also, we want to make sure our Cloud Web Security server is configured. So that would be under Network, Cloud Connector. And that's where it will show up. This is the server we added to Proxy32 ScanSafe.net. This is the one that is the tower where my Cloud Connector will send all the web traffic to. Okay. Let's go and commit the change. Perfect. So at this point, what we have done is we ran through these steps. We created a cloud identity, routing policy, proxy server. Now we're about to test. In order to test, I have an explicit connection here. This is my browser for testing. Let's make sure I'm pointing to the right machine. And this is the IP address of Cloud Connector, 172.18.254.123. Say OK out of it. And before we test anything, we'll make sure we are capturing data. Okay. So go to Cisco.com. So let's see here. So as we see the access log, it shows the client IP, then is my www.cisco.com. Of course, it's rolled over. Let's go on top of the page. We'll break out of it. So these access log is pretty standard. The only thing is need to understand is the parent. My parent was the upstream proxy. In this case, is proxy32.scansafe.net, and the policy and identity. So here is my identity. We called it CWS Identity 1. And then our policy is CWS Policy 1. And then the rest of the HTTP decision codes, it all is the same. So we need to see this is going through the parent and hitting the right policy and identity. If we have multiple identities, then we want to make sure we can segment it by IP, user agent, and nothing has changed from all the other configurable options. The other way we can confirm this by looking at capture. I had a capture running. So if we look at the very first packet, packet number 516, client 135, explicit connection to the proxy, Cloud Connector rather, and then Cloud Connector makes a connection to 80.254.146.211. This is the IP address of the tower, which is here. So, okay. We computer. So that's the IP address 82.54.146.2.11. So Cloud Connector makes a request, a GET request, HTTP GET, Cisco.com. One thing to notice here, if you look at the summary window, on my TCP, this is the source that's making a request, which is a Cloud Connector. This is my destination, 82.54.146.2.11. It's the destination port. It's 8080. So my tower is listening on port 8080. So client connection, if you look at the client connection, is port 80 because it's the web traffic for Cisco.com. But then he makes a request to the tower, and that's port 8080. Okay. Let's see. Look at our notes. So we ran through these steps. The other example, I believe I have in here. This is the access log, pretty standard. Default parent, proxynet, CWS identity, in this case. There was another packet capture was done earlier while I was testing. In this case, 123, making a request out to 211, which is the tower itself, and the website, and the ports, 8080, 8080. The other test can be done from the command line, or if we have some connectivity issues, we can always do a telnet on our tower just to make sure it is working, but this time will be on port 8080. So we want to make sure if there are some connectivity issue, are we sending traffic out to the tower? And if there are some issues as to connect, first thing we can check even our cloud connector able to connect to the tower on a particular port, yes or no, and then we can issue some GET requests here as well too, if you want to granular. But this could be a pretty basic test as well. Okay, so that will bring us to review. Let's run through real quick. So what we did was we ran through how to deploy web security appliance in a cloud connector mode. We reset the configuration, ran through system administration setup wizard, and then we select the deployment mode, install configuration log backend. We briefly stared and compare the available options when we are deployed in a connector mode. Part 2, we went through and configure a cloud identity, very simple cloud routing policy, and we used our security proxy server, the one we deployed or added during the deployment. We look at the access log on the cloud connector. We can also do the telnet, reverse telnet connection on port 8080 as well. Review the access log and the packet capture, which shows the first connection from the client to cloud connector would be port 80. Then from cloud connector out to tower to get Cisco.com will be destination on port 8080. These are the source port as well, so an IP on IP layer. This is my HTTP request. I kept it simple, nothing complex, but we'll add more series to this video to add some more functionality of cloud connector if needed. So with that, we wrap things up. Thank you so much for joining. I hope this useful, and have a great day, great afternoon, and great evening. Thanks again for taking the time. Bye-bye.